Welcome to this week's Reddit reply. I'm excited for this, but I have to warn you really quick. I have to warn you with this very first thing I'm going to show you. It's not safe. If you have small children in the room, you should probably have them leave. What I'm about to show you is pretty disturbing. I mean, not really. I mean, it's just for Marvel Champions. It is, but I have to show you this, and then we'll go through the rest of the Reddit reply. So I saw this post on Reddit, and it's I may be history's greatest monster. This person cut the card in half, the new Angel card, because they don't like the folded cards, I guess. And they have two separate cards in cases, which is also crazy. They put them in these cases. I haven't done that yet. I do like the idea, but obviously with folded cards doesn't work. But yeah, that is quite a thing to do. I think this would actually drive me nuts because it's harder to read, like right down here where it says like after you play an aerial event, whatever, events printed cost. Like, I mean, you can obviously figure it out, but like I think that would actually bother me more than the folded cardness. So anyway, that was just a fun little thing that I saw out there. And then, all right, so next we have what's your hot take, unpopular opinion about this game? Really quick, we're going to go through probably a lot of the hot takes in here because I think this is a really fun thing to do. Um, but most importantly, if I cover your hot take and I disagree with you, please don't take it as me saying like, "Oh, you're wrong, your opinion's bad," or anything like that. It's not that. It's just we have different opinions. That's all it is. So we have different opinions. That's totally cool. It's what makes this game so great and so fun. But I just want to throw that out there really fast that if I like disagree with someone or agree with someone, it's just it's not against that person. It's just against the idea. So anyway, but my unpopular opinion is that I don't really like allies. I don't like them functionally because they usually cost a lot for something that's less satisfying than a dedicated card of equal cost. And I much prefer the satisfaction. I can't talk to that. Blasting your opponent with like 8 damage or draining a dangerous scheme of all the threat over throwing out another chain in your meat shield. My strongest dislike for them is thematically, though, because I feel like they are a weak shadow of the actual character. Hulk is one of the strongest heroes in the game in terms of pure HP and attacks, and Magneto absolutely messes you around for hours. But both of their ally forms can be taken out by a single pretty average villain attack. Of course, this applies to all allies, blah, 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 blah. I actually think this is an interesting hot take. I think it's not bad because there is something to be said with allies. Like, I think allies right now are one of the weaker parts of the game, and they're not bad by any means, but they're weak in the sense that, like, except for Phantom Max, I feel like most allies do generally the same exact thing, right? You have a little bit of wiggle room with trying to I don't know. Some of them may attack, and like when they attack, they scheme as well, or they don't take consequential damage if they attack minions or this and that. But like they all generally do the same exact thing, right? I'm putting them out there to do like a little bit of attack, a little bit of thwarting, and then to just get hit in the face, so I don't have to. I wish there was a better system for defending and attacking. Like I know that's not what the game wants you to do because it wants you to make a choice, which is fine. It's good game design, but because of that, it lends to allies being less important feeling. Like it literally just throws like you're throwing them through a meat grinder constantly. And I get that thematically it feels weird. Like you never watched the comics or I'm sorry, read the comics or watched the movies where like there's just like, hey buddy, like go. And then they get like knocked out like a minute later in the movie. And then like, an hour later, maybe you see them again, they get knocked out. Like there's a little more to it usually. So I kind of agree with that assessment, that hot take. I wish there was more to it. Now, Phantom Max, I do think is one of the more interesting ones with that the Eva support comes in when he comes in and leaves when he leaves. I actually think that's a pretty cool design. I hope they start doing more designs like that because I think it's nice and different. But overall, like I know some people are gonna be like, well, some of the allies, like cause confuse or stun, or like that's all cool, that's all fine, and they're changed up a little bit. But even after that, they feel like they're doing the same exact thing. You know what I mean? So anyway, I get the hot take, and I kind of agree with it. I guess appearance in a comic book, whatever. Okay, so my hot take is that true solo is too unbalanced and swingy to enjoy. I disagree hard with this hot take. Like, I disagree hard with this. I think this is a take from like 3 years ago, and I would agree with it 3 years ago, right? When this game first came out, even the first cycle, it true solo was very, very hard. It was very, very hard and difficult to play. It's you had to be justice or leadership, and there was really no other option. because the game would just kind of run away from you, right? You didn't have enough way to control statuses. You didn't have enough way to, stun and confuse. You didn't have piercing. You didn't have all these different things that you do now. We have so many options now in True Solo that I hard disagree that True Solo is too unbalanced and swingy. Does it happen now and again? Yeah, I mean, you all have watched my live streams, and if you haven't, go over to twitch.tv/D20 Woodworking to go do so. But watching my live streams, I mean, how often on the live stream, we play a lot of games, does something like truly unbalanced and swinging happen? Like, it's not that often. Does it happen? Sure. It's always going to happen. And it happens in multiplayer games too. But this idea that like it happens all the time, like I don't see it. I don't see it at all. So I don't really agree with that assessment. So anyway, disagree with that hot take for sure. It also feels like protection and justice are much worse in solo because you're dragging the game on for longer, whereas multiplayer you can complement a lack of damage one character. I also hard disagree with that. Protection and justice are much worse in solo because you're just dragging the game along for longer. Now, a fair argument to that would be that rush strategy with aggression makes the game fast and it's really easy to win that way. And I agree with that. If that's what they're trying to say, I agree with that. But justice is very good for solo. Like it's very, 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 very good. And protection nowadays is very, very, very good for solo. Protection controlled the board state very easily by itself nowadays in solo. Like weirdly enough, the weakest one is probably aggression right now, but it can be the strongest if you're doing aggression rush. Like it's a very weird state we're in for solo play. Leadership is always good, but I feel like it hasn't changed much. Like it's always been very good and slowly sliding backwards in the pack, which is fine. Like it's good for its to bounce around and whatnot. But no, I don't agree with that at all. Have you played solo? Whatever. Actually, my take is that I like True Solo most because of its swinginess. Again, I don't agree that it's swingy, but okay, that happens in multiplayer too. Agree with that. But I wish there was more alter ego focus in the game, as it's one of the champion's most unique elements, as well as part of the game that makes Marvel Champions so interesting. So it's funny with this hot take of alter ego. I actually wish alter ego was less important. Like I feel like when you play multiplayer game or multiplayer games, that like people are popping down the alter ego constantly, and I feel like this isn't a thing. Let me make this slightly bigger so you can read it. I feel like this isn't a thing that happens a lot in like movies or comics. Like when they're doing like a fight against like Thanos or whatever, like they're not popping back and forth constantly, right? Like yes, it happens throughout the story that like okay, you're this and then that, and maybe it's supposed to be a more long out drawn battle. I don't know, but I actually don't like how much you have to go down to alter ego. Like it's this weird thing. Like thematically, I don't like it. Mechanically, yes, I do. Mechanically, I like it. Mechanically, it works really well. Thematically, I don't like it. It feels weird. It feels very disjointed, to me at least. So I'm not a huge fan of alter ego. Maybe that's just because I just don't like going to alter ego that much. Maybe that's why I'm picking on it. I think on a related note, I think obligations are a missed opportunity to do something more interesting. Obligation mechanic being its own little mini game problem that you have to manage on top of dealing with the villain, with each hero having its unique wrinkles based on his life. Like Peter Parker was responsible for working for the Daily Bugle, and he's stashing Spider-Man cards under JJ or discarding them in alter ego to give up giving JJ pictures. I think you could do something really interesting with this. I think what the hard part is that the board state will just run out. Like it'll just go too crazy. I think that like the thwarting will be too high. Like there's just too much that would happen. Like I think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that they could play around with. And this next person talks about with alter ego side schemes or something. Like I think that could be something interesting, but I feel like there's already like the one thing we've learned from personal side schemes is that if you focus on them too much, the game state runs away, and that's what I worry about with this. Is that okay? If you start focusing on all these other little small things, like it could be cool and thematic and be fun, but the game state's gonna run away because of how the game works. Like you can't control everything that much. Even in multiplayer, it's gonna be too much. So, yeah, I like the idea of it. I think it's cool. Unpopular opinion. The big deck builders solicit votes on Discord, or at least in the beginning, which is how they got notoriety. I often search for random decks to use by people with no clout, and a lot of time they're just as good as the popular deck builders. As someone who has played the game of the YouTube algorithm, which PS by the thing, like when people say like, oh, the YouTube algorithm's against me, like that's not a real thing, right? The algorithm doesn't pick and choose winners. People who watch YouTube pick and choose winners, but that's a whole nother side story. But I also have spammed my content on Reddit. I have spammed my content in Discord channels and whatever. So like I can't judge too much. Like I'm that person, but with content creation. So I get it. But I will say there are, I'm not gonna name names, but there are certain big deck builders who like I look to first. And I think they make really good decks. Now, do I tweak them because their playstyle isn't the same as my playstyle? Absolutely. But I do think they're very good at what they do. And I think that they're naturally going to be good because of repetition. And I think the same with people that make um, they're not as well known. Um, and also, which is funny too, because after this they talked about if you're a streamer, clip your fingernails, and I made my comment bad. Um, but I think if you're not as well known, but you have a lot of practice deck building over and over and over and over, and you probably take some time into it. You take some, you take some what do I want to say, not courage with it, but you take your time with it and you really want to improve upon yourself. So naturally you're going to get better. The vast majority of decks I see on Marvel CDB nowadays are like, they're pretty good, right? And I will generally click on people's names to see if they've done a few. If it's their very first deck, I probably won't like play it, but if they've done a few, then like I'll definitely check it out. So yeah, I don't know. Like with soliciting votes, like you kind of have to. Like like honestly, you kind of have to. So I don't disagree with this like 100%. Like it's very, very hard to get started from the ground up again with YouTube. Again, algorithms don't pick winners or losers, but YouTube feeds videos to people that they would most likely watch, right? And if your videos aren't getting clicked on, it's because people won't likely watch them. Where it's easier on Discord and Reddit to say, hey, don't judge my video just by my thumbnail. Like, here's a long description of what it is, and here's what I'm trying to do, and whatever. And it gives more context to the video, and that's a higher probability of people clicking on it and then getting fed through YouTube and that stuff. I think that's the same with people that deck build on Discord and Reddit and stuff, is that instead of just like seeing if they have a really funny name and clicking on it or whatever, they can give context right away to it, or at least like a synopsis to it. So you're like, oh, okay, like I'm intrigued by this deck, or I'm not intrigued by this deck. I don't think it's that good. So yeah, whatever. All right. I think Nemesis card set is the weakest part of the game design. They could have come up with something much better. Having Nemesis card only come into play with Shadow in the past and resolving is unsatisfied. It's all or nothing. Why bother? As someone who draws Shadow of the Past constantly, I don't mind Nemesis design. I get it. I get where their point of view is. To me, what makes it interesting is that the game doesn't feel as samey every single time, right? So if you have Shadow of the Past, if you don't have Shadow of the Past, right, Nemesis always gets shuffled in. Like there's a high probability you see your Nemesis every single time. If you're an average player and you're not me, if you're adding Shadow of the Past, like I think it throws a fun wrinkle into the game. So I get what they're saying, that they want the design to like be fleshed out more and do more with it. But I do think that um, you know they want something to like happen randomly. That's what I'm gonna guess with the game design. They wanted something to happen randomly and not just like happen all the time and to be expected. So whatever. There are cards shows past. I love the idea. All right, people talking about Nemesis stuff for a while. Wrecking Crew is one of the best scenarios. It's a hot take. That's a hot take for sure. I'm gonna go with no. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. Like people like really hate on that scenario, and I don't agree with the hate it gets, but it's not one of the best. I don't think. I think on the expert, it's actually a decent, fun challenge, but yeah. I'm baffled by the campaigns. I find the campaigns take the best quality of the game, its pick up and play nature, the comparative ease to get into the table of LCGs, and replace them with an extra bookkeeping and tedious setup. Having a loose narrative as you play 5 scenarios in a row is endearing, but I feel that's more than enough for me rather than any campaign mechanics. I could do without the extra cards and rules. So I don't know how many people know this. There was an interview done, and I don't remember if it was Caleb Grace or the other person who started the game, and I can't remember the person, and I apologize. Boggs. I don't remember if it was Caleb Grace or Michael Boggs that talked about it, that they never designed the campaigns originally in Red Skull, right? That was never an original design. And Andy Navarro at the time was the studio head, who Andy Navarro now works with Chip Theory Games, I believe still. I'm not 100% sure. I think he's the studio head there. And he also has Earthborn Rangers and his own thing going on, right? But Andy said like they should have a campaign. Like that should absolutely be something a part of it. And Michael and Caleb were like, okay, like our studio head tells us to do something, we're going to do it. So it's kind of thrown in at the last minute. This is why the Red Skull campaign is very, very basic, like very basic, because it was thrown in last minute. Which again, I'm not like judging it. I'm not judging the way they did things. Like, I think it's totally cool. But I think since then they've wanted to like expand upon it a little bit because there is some interesting stuff that campaign does. Does it become a little too rules heavy and a little too bookkeepy? Yeah, it does sometimes. It could be a little much, especially with like the Spider-Man track in the back, and you got to go through. Like, it's a neat idea, and I'm happy they don't do it all the time. I'm happy it's different each time. But that's why they do it, and that's why like it feels disjointed from the game. It's because it was never originally designed to have a campaign game. It was something Andy Navarro really wanted, or for some reason wanted that in there, and then Boggs and Caleb put it in. And I think it was just them two. If there was someone else involved, I'm sorry if I missed your name. This was way before Tony, so I know he wasn't a part of it. But if I missed someone's name, like, I apologize. But yeah, that was the rough idea with that. Not sure if I'm popular, but as much as I like the hero, each hero has a theme and playstyle. I hate the majority of hero kit always includes 3-man attack, 3-man thwart, leaves you with only 7 cards to look forward to when opening new packs. Some of those attack thwart interact with hero kit as well, like Star-Lord, but some are just okay. Not sure how I feel about the modular design. I love creating villain decks with cool situations in mind, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind a bigger villain decks with more mechanics and theme that I can just pick up and play, like Sentinels and Multiverse. All right, so the first part, I actually agree with this take a lot. This is my biggest issue with Marvel Champions right now. Look, I love the game. I'll continue supporting it. I like what they're doing, generally speaking. But a lot of the heroes feel very samey. Like, they have a rough formula of what they're trying to do. And this is, I haven't come out with my review of Angel yet or anything like that. But with the exception of Psylocke, or not Psylocke, the exception of Domino, my biggest issue with a lot of heroes from this cycle is that like they're not doing anything super new and unique, right? Yes, Cable introduces player side schemes, but anyone could have, right? Psylocke, we have a review of Psylocke. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Angel, like, I like Angel. I like the way Angel plays. It plays on my playstyle, but he's not doing anything super unique and different. And this is what I look forward to now. I mean, we have 30 some heroes, right? I don't necessarily need just like another hero. I want something interesting. I want something new to be brought to the table. It doesn't have to be big things or anything like that, but small tweaks. And I know people yell at me because Psylocke did something slightly different. Yeah, like a little. But the big issue is like, I agree with this person that there are the main thwart, the main attacks, and there's usually one defense card as well. And then you can usually have an upgrade and usually having a support and a signature ally. So really, it's like only like a couple of cards you're really looking for that are slightly different. It stinks. Like, it stinks. And I get it because you can only go so far out of the framework. Like, you can't go too crazy. If you go too crazy, then it might break the game. It might not test well. Then you have to start from scratch. Like, I do get it. But yeah, I get their argument with this, for sure. And then about the modular design, I've gotten better recently with modular design, and I like it more now, but thematically it doesn't always make sense. We recently had a game where, what villain was I? Strife, and he had like the goblin gear, and like thematically that doesn't work great. Like, thematically that's not making sense. Now, it's a fun game to play. It was a hard game to play, but thematically it's weird. And I do wish there was more situations. Like, I wish they came out with like theme packs for like the villains, or like maybe like a theme pack for the cycle. Like, I think something like that would be cool. Like, if you're playing Spider-Man villains, come out with a pack of cards that just like are different mods that make a lot of sense. And I think actually they did a pretty good job with that, but maybe more X-Men stuff or like related with that, or more Avenger related stuff, or Guardian related stuff, right? More Guardian related like modular sets to like, maybe you can adjust Nebula and Ronin that way. I don't know. But anyway, I wish they would do more things for mods for like specific not specific villains, but specific type of villains. I think that can make things more interesting. Solo play is often unbalanced and so swingy, it's sometimes unfun. Disagree. All the villains that require ship command are more fun when you ignore ship command and just pass around the Milano. You know what's kind of funny with this? I actually really don't like the free resource the Milano gives you. Like, this is a weird thing where, to me, it changes the dynamic of the hero so much that I can't tell if I built a good deck or not. Like, I don't mind it sometimes. Like, if I have to make a harder villain easier, like, I like it for that. But it's because you get a free resource right away with a lot of heroes that shouldn't have free resources right away because they could take advantage of it like a little too quick. I really don't like the Milano and the ship command modular set. And I don't like that it's like forced upon you for some scenarios. Faction specific cards are a cool idea, but unfun and limiting to thematic deck building and practice. By faction, do they mean like Guardian cards and stuff like that? Because I disagree. I think that's a lot of fun. And I think we have such a big card pool now that it doesn't really matter. My group loves Surge. Nothing brings us quite so much mechanic or maniacal joy as flipping 14 encounter cards over a single villain phase and still hanging in there. There is something satisfying. Like I've had games on stream where we've had like 9 Ronin cards and you somehow survive. Like it's cool. It's fun. I don't want it to happen that often, but it's fun. It can be fun. The more cards we resolve in the game, the more fun we're having. It doesn't matter. Cards equal fun. Okay, I understand that. The ordinary villains don't feel all that different from the ones that branch further from the norm, often feel fiddly and burdensome. Probably a me problem, but it's just a little annoying to constantly realize I forgot some detail on one of the many cards on the table. But that said, I do enjoy the game, no hate. There are certain villains where like I feel like I have to read 5 cards, and I don't want that from Marvel Champions. Like I want a quick action game, right? I want things to be quick. I want it to be to the point, and I want everything to be easy to understand. And sometimes they have keywords. Sometimes there's things in the sentence. Like I wish. I don't like that some of the villains, and I can't think of any top of my head, of course, but there's like a line usually like on an environment card or a side scheme card or whatever where like you have to make sure you like read that line each time because it changes the game state. I wish everything was just keyword based so I can quickly glance at keywords. But yeah, that's just like a weird thing. I I feel like there's enough variation in the villains now. They all feel pretty different to me. Like I'm trying to compare like Red Skull villains to like um the most recent X-Men villains, next or whatever it is, next villains, next evolution villains. And I feel like they're pretty different. And I feel like there's a decent amount of variation. I mean, if you break it down to its simplest form, yeah, all villains are the same. But I think on paper, like I think there's enough difference. At least for me, there is. So I can't stand the modular design. It's brilliant, useful, welcoming, all that and more. I'd much rather just be able to pull out a villain deck and play. Heck, I take take that with heroes too honestly, but then the point of the game knows if fit the Marvel theme for modular design can. Yeah, I mean, again, this was another thing for me that took so long to come around for me on modular design. Thematically, I still don't love it at times, but if I can make the theme work, or it's just a random game or just playing a random game of marbles, I don't mind it as much. But I get the argument. Like, if you're big in the theme, I think modular design sets like kind of ruin the theme of the game a bit. The Galaxy's Most Wanted isn't nearly as terrible as most people act. I agree with this person now. At the time, because we only had one other big box, it was as terrible. It was terrible. It was a god awful experience. It was terrible. Ronin is now more doable than he was in the past, right? There's enough strong heroes out there and a big enough card pool that you can beat Ronin with most heroes nowadays. Like pretty much any hero can beat Ronin. It might be hard. It might not happen your first time, but it can be done. This wasn't the case when it first came out. Like Ronin was just too powerful. Nebula was super swingy, and I still like Nebula's design, but like you could play 5 games in a row of Nebula and one be extremely easy, one be harder than Ronin, and then like a bunch of things in the middle. Like it's very unpredictable, and maybe that's good nowadays. Like that's not so bad. Again, we've talked about this. Collector 2, I think is we all kind of lumped in with Collector 1, so we just hated it. And Drang, most people were fine with. I don't like that Drang starts with a modular set of ship command in play, and that I just start with a resource generator. I don't like that. I think it makes this scenario a little too easy, but it is a first stage villain, so it should be a little bit easier. I'm annoyed by deck building. I wish we could just pick up a deck and play for each character. Uh, I mean, you could. I mean that's why all the heroes are put in a deck. I mean, you can just do that. That's a thing. So yeah, I mean that can be done. I mean, deck building is kind of like one of the bigger parts of this game. So I get it. If you're not into deck building, it's not your thing. That's fine. And really, it's deck construction, not deck building. But we're not gonna be too technical here. But I mean, that's why it comes with decks, right? That's why you have pre-con decks. So you can just do that. In all the 3 co-op LCGs, allies are so unthematic. In Marvel, they force every fight to be a team fight with no opportunity for a single hero to shine. Plus the stuff original poster mentioned. In Arkham, what should be a lonely Lovecraftian protagonist might lead to what amounts of D&D true solo. And Lord of the Rings repeatedly throw poor folks to the wolves so Aragorn doesn't get hit. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like in Arkham though, I do a decent job without allies. Like I could do okay without allies, but I get their argument for sure. Doctor Strange is great, maybe even the strongest hero in the game, but he's not as strong as everyone says he is. If you're the strongest hero in the game, would you not be as strong as everyone says? Like, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, look, I hate Doctor Strange as much as the next person, right? As much as the next red-blooded American. But he is strong. If you want to make the argument he's not as strong as everyone says, I mean, the problem is he kind of is. Like he is strong because the invocation deck is so strong, right? As long as you exploit that, you're good, right? You will do fine. So I don't know. To me, it's a weird argument to make that. If like for me, all right. So Valkyrie is obviously the best hero, but I'd be saying like they're not as great as I make her out to seem. Like I don't know. That whole sentence sounds weird to me. Maybe they're not saying like he's invincible. Maybe that's their argument. If I was to like strong man that argument or steel man that argument, um, maybe the argument is that like people are making it seem like Strange can never lose, and that's certainly not true, right? Strange can absolutely lose. I've lost with Strange multiple times, but he's still pretty strong. So still pretty terrible, but pretty strong. Let me know you have the same powers. Hold on, wait. Try with any other character. Just take one of your best events and then remove thwart and attack. It's not. Should make same power. Okay, so they're just really getting into that. Oh my god, do people not play solo? Like, honest to God, did people play solo like way back in the beginning of the game, make their opinion, and then never come back to the game? Because that's the only way I can understand arguments like this. Like, I just look, if you don't want to play solo, I get it. I get it. But to just say there's so much randomness that you can't play the game, right? Like, no, there's not. Like, I think there's enough solo players out there on stream and on YouTube that have disproved this, that this is not the case. You miss out on a lot of the game. Do you? Do you? Do you? I mean, if the idea is I miss out on a lot of the game because I don't see all the cards, okay, sure, that's an argument. I would say that my game is unique more times because I don't see all the cards, right? If you're playing a multiplayer game of 4 players and I see every single card in the deck, right, multiple times, if you play that scenario again, you're going to be bored of it because you saw every single card in that deck. If I play that same scenario twice in a solo play and I get different cards each time, like that's cool to me, right? And maybe that's what they mean by random, but that doesn't make it unstable or not playable, right? Like there's this weird conflation. I feel like that random cards showing up in the encounter deck equals bad, right? Like no, because you would still see those cards in multiplayer. So like I don't know, whatever. Okay, so they get back in the allies. That's fine. Custom heroes are way better than the official ones. There are some really cool designs out there. Hey, let's go. Darth Majora. Solo play is GOAT. Multiplayer is very, very mediocre. I don't think it's a mediocre experience, but I do agree solo play is goated. Okay, a lot of people talking about that. Most games end in a pretty anticlimactic way. Like you manage to survive enough to get your allies, and then on the ground, you're just like, oh, he's dead, and that's it. It can end that way, but I feel like at the end, most of my games, like they're pretty tight. Maybe you just need to up the difficulty a little bit. I don't know. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of talking there. I've heard this opinion quite a few times, but how does Arkham? No, that's Arkham stuff. Okay. I find this game really hard, and I often turns into absolute slog in setting up and balancing on a razor's edge, trying to find powers separately for the deck. My wife, who loves co-op games, won't play because it never feels like you get anywhere. Might need to dig more into deck building, custom tailor each scenario, but that's also insane. I should be able to make a hero functional and in an aspect and at least have it work in most situations. My group and I have struggled terribly on the Hood and Saber 2 scenarios, and it usually comes down to a good deck isn't focused enough. I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of it has to do with gameplay style. Like, okay, so you have to know. I I feel like the vast majority of heroes you can build any deck on standard and do okay. You might not win every single time, but you could do okay. On expert, no, it's a different story. On expert, you need to tune your deck and understand what the villain's trying to do and all that fun stuff. And like, it's a much harder scenario as it should be. But on standard, like, I feel like nowadays with the card pool, you can do that. I if I built a generic justice deck, I feel like on standard I can beat probably 80% of the villains with it and like not try too hard. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if it's just I don't know what they would be doing that'd be making it that hard. Like my first worry is that they're playing something slightly wrong or making the rules harder than it has to be on themselves. Um, I get the idea that it never feels like you get anywhere because it does feel like you're always slightly behind and then you have to wait to that turning point. But there's a lot of board games like that, like Spirit Island's like that, right? Spirit Island feels like you're always behind like the difficulty curve and then you don't start winning until like the very end where like, oh, like I finally surpassed how difficult it's getting because you built up faster than the invaders have. But yeah, I I don't know. I think that's interesting. Maybe their strategy is just really to slow play things. And I think if you go too slow and slow play things, maybe that's what's hurting him. That'd be my other guess. For me, like, and again, I play differently than most people. I have to build kind of fast and I have to go kind of fast because I will slowly start to fall behind. And it is a game where you can start falling behind. So maybe that's what's happening. They're just building out so much and they're just falling behind. Symbiote suit, that is all. I dislike its use, punish the team for one player's benefit. Nah, symbiote suit's cool. The current wave is the worst one of the game yet. That's a hot take. Excluding perhaps Guardians Most Wanted. The heroes are way too powerful compared to most that have come before it, so now players will expect future heroes to be at least the same power level. This will make the game too easy and thus unfun. That the problem with that sentence is it assumes that the villains won't increase in power difficulty as well. Most villains in the new campaign box are already too easy as well. I do agree with that. They are too easy. At least Guardians Most Wanted and Doctor Strange set a standard early in the game's life of how not to do it, and it showed that they really learn how to better balance future heroes and villain sets. But since Tony took the reins with the designer, the game took a wild turn, and I'm worried about the direction it's going. I also can't comprehend the choice of X-Force heroes for this wave. So many more X-Men to cover. I mean, whatever they choose is what they choose. The power wave thing or the power level thing I do agree with. Domino is stupidly strong. Cable is getting stronger. Angel I think is pretty strong. Even though I don't like Psylocke, I think she's stronger. She might be the weakest one for me, but she's still like on the upper tier power level. I okay. I agree with this statement to a point of that there is how to phrase this that the villains are too easy on standard. Like they just are too easy on standard in this box. It does feel like a step back, and the heroes besides Domino, I don't think are like overly OP powerful. I think they just feel that way because the box difficulty went down. Like X-Men box, Mutant Genesis versus Next Evolution. Like Mutant Genesis, I think is harder than Next Evolution. Like I still don't think Strife and Mr. Sinister and Juggernaut, even though I like those scenarios, like I think they're cool and they're fun, decent design. Like they are all easier than their counterparts in other games, right? In my opinion. There might be like a weird exception in there somewhere that I can't think of. Like maybe a Master Mold was like a bit easier than Juggernaut. Like, okay, you can make that argument. But in general, I feel like they did step down the difficulty in the box. And that's why it feels like all the new heroes are more powerful than they are. Like run through, honestly, I run through some of these new heroes against a Venom Goblin, against a Ronin, against a Thanos, against a Loki. Like they won't feel that powerful. They really won't. So to me, it feels like they're judging it just off this wave and they're not taking those new heroes against old villains. And I do think you have to do that to like truly compare. Like I was running some of them through Expert Zola for fun because I like Expert Zola. I think it's a fun challenge. And like it's tough. Like it's a tough scenario. Don't think that they can just walk through all those old villains. So I disagree with that point. Um so as far as like the direction of the game is going, like a lot of people love Tony's design and like have been like praising it nonstop. Like I think so far it's fine, right? I think my biggest critique of this cycle so far is that it feels very safe, with the exception of Domino. Domino feels like the one risk they took, and we haven't seen Deadpool yet, or I haven't seen Deadpool yet. I haven't seen X-23 yet, so you know there's still that, but it feels very safe, right? Psylocke feels somewhat safe in the way that she works because she's kind of based off a spider, in my opinion. But okay, player side schemes. We've done this before, Lord of the Rings, so it feels kind of same. Like Cable, a lot of his deck is very samey and safe. Angel is very safe hero design, in my opinion. Same with all the villains; they're very safe designs to not rock the boat too much. So that's been my kind of biggest critique of this cycle as a whole. But I get it. I also feel like they shouldn't and this just shows like the weirdness, not the weirdness, but like people really love Tony's designs, like general, like it's like this internet talk that you have to praise Tony and all his designs. Like again, I don't think he's bad. I think it's just everything's safe. So that's my biggest critique. It's not fun. You can adjust your encounter difficulty with Hoek. Yeah. Okay. This is also okay. Here's one of my hot takes. I am really tired of this argument that, oh, well, you can just make the game harder, right? I know they wanted you to do it the same way, and that it's no problem that the villains are too easy because you can just make the game harder, right? So why does it matter that the villains are too easy? What the problem with that argument is that one, it works both ways, right? Like even if you made it too hard, then well, you can just make it easier with modular sets, right? Like you just make Ronin easier with modular sets, which you can do. You can make Ronin a lot easier because of modular sets. So then, thus, difficulty design doesn't matter, right? Like that's the problem with that argument is that they never have to worry about difficulty design. Like you still have to worry about it, right? It still has to be like decent. It has to start in the middle. If you have a scale, right, and this is hard and this is easy, you want your design to be in the middle, right? So this way, yes, you can mod it to make it harder. You can mod it to make it easier. If it starts off on the easier side, it's harder to make it harder, right? Because you have to use only like a certain set of modular sets. So like, I don't like that argument that like, oh, you can just do it, because then it takes out the whole idea that you have to balance a villain design, right? It takes out the idea that, oh no, it's on the players to make your scenario either harder or easier, right? Like I don't know that I just don't like that argument, because again, when they design a hero, standard should have like basically a standard difficulty. You can make the argument that should be a little bit harder than the previous cycle, right? Because there's always gonna be power creep, so you can make it a little bit harder. An expert should be a little bit harder. Everything should be a little bit harder because of power creep, like just a touch harder. But this idea that, oh, you take a step back, well then power creep, like this post said, heroes are going to feel really strong compared to what they actually should feel like. So again, I don't like the argument. That's my weird hot take. I'm probably going to get yelled at for that, because the running thing on the internet is, oh, you can just change it with modular sets. And like, no, I disagree with that take. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of the game's main format, objectives, and crises. I enjoy brawls, your team versus my team, last team standing wins. Sounds like this is not the game for you. I played only once with the start snare and ended up selling the game along with the puzzles not feel compelling enough. This was a game I care about to stay interested and motivated to bring out. And again, I mean, if you know that right away, cool. Like that's completely fine. So yeah. Marvel Snap killed it for me. Marvel Snap is not. No. I'm not sure it's a hot take, but building a deck without allies just for chump blocks. I want to build a heroes deck that feels like stealth and the hero's focus and not an allies. Yeah, I wonder if you could do that. I feel like you can. I feel like there's some pretty good event decks out there where you don't really play allies at all. I'm not good with them though. But I hate the emphasis on deck building. Yeah, that's basically a pro to game. So anyway, those are me kind of going through all the hot takes as of right now with them being posted. Again, friendly reminder, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean, I'm calling you out or anything like that. Like, I like the disagreement. I think it's important. I appreciate everyone that's willing to make a hot take, even if people downvote you on Reddit. If you're willing to like put good faith in it and not just like trash the game to trash the game, but you're giving your actual honest take and you're trying to be good natured about it, I'm 100% for that. So I appreciate everyone that did this. Let me know your hot takes down in the comments. I love them. I love hot takes. So put them down in the comments. I would greatly appreciate that. So this card gives you tough for the attack, so you don't receive damage for Archangel. Aerial Agility, it's a defense card. When an enemy attacks, if you are Angel, you ignore the boost icons, and Archangel, give each hero a tough. Yeah, so basically if you're Archangel, you get a tough stat, so you don't take any damage, and you get retaliate for that attack. It's a pretty cool card. I mean, it's just an event card, so it stinks in that aspect, but yeah, it works pretty well. Blank card in Wolverine Hero Pack. This is wild to me that somebody got this. Like, it's normal back, and then it's just like a blank front. Like, I wonder what card they're missing out of. And I feel like some people made the comment that like if they were playing Magic the Gathering, like this card be worth like a ton of money. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's got a gold rectangle with a small barcode. I guess it's just the printer missed or something. I don't know. But that is wild. Also, is that what the normal back looks like? I play with like my back of my cards are sleeved black. So I don't even remember what it looks like on the back and if that's even right. War Machine shoulder cannon while the enemy is tough. Can you ready shoulder cannon after attacking a tough enemy since deal 1 damage after the arrow has not been fulfilled? Okay, so I already know why this is happening because of the She-Hulk thing, so we're gonna have to get into it, and I assume they're gonna talk about this. She-Hulk superhuman strength when enemies are stunned. So the problem with this is having a target, right? So let's look at this. So She-Hulk superhuman strength. After She-Hulk strength, or I'm sorry, after She-Hulk attacks, discard this card to stun the attacked enemy. The reason the whole thing of like before the arrow and after the arrow and all that fun stuff is because if there's nothing, if you can't stun an enemy, you can't do the before thing, right? That's the only thing. So their argument is with deal and take, you can't stun anyone, so thus like it wouldn't work. With the shoulder cannon, it just says deal 1 damage to an enemy. Now people are going to be wondering with deal and take, like how does that work? Deal, right? You do up to the amount of damage. Take, you have to take it all. So take, you have to take all the damage. Deal, you don't have to deal all of it. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so this person asked, they had a picture of Angel. Say I use Razor Dive and it does 6 damage, and then I use Angel of Death ability, which would do another 3 damage. Is that considered 2 different attacks? Reasons would be to knock the tough off an enemy. Yeah, so it would be 2 different attacks, but Razor Dive also has piercing, so you don't have to worry about that. But let's just say you were doing that. Yes, this would be 1 attack, and then the response is after you play an aerial event, you would deal damage, right? So you do the 1 attack, and then the response is after the event is played, right? You play the aerial event, that does the whole aerial event, then you respond. So, and also it could be a different enemy, right? So you deal 6 damage to an enemy, and then this is deals damage to an enemy equal to the event's printed cost. So it doesn't have to be the same enemy either. That's also an important note. It could be 2 different enemies. So if you knock one out with Razor Dive, you could do it with someone else on Angel of Death. Villain Rush. Hey all, I play with a group of 4 pretty consistently. When playing in big groups, everyone has specific roles, and we don't build rush decks because we don't have to. I started playing solo and 2-handed player more and noticed the rush strategy is much more effective and viable. My friend and I were having a discussion, how many turns can you expect to win with a good rush deck? Like a really good rush deck, you can win in 1 turn. I think we have done it on this stream. I think other people, I think Nelson has done it, Descry has done it, and some other people have done it. But you can win in 1 turn. It can absolutely be done. There is actually, I think I have videos on it. If not, I should probably do more. I think I've done it with Star-Lord. But there's a rough strategy of the 3-turn strategy for Rush, where basically like you go from Ultra Ego to flip on or to Hero on the first turn. You do your attack events, all that fun stuff. You take some damage, you get a cheap block, whatever it may be. Second turn, you do whatever, then you flip down to let the villain scheme so that you could save a turn of getting hit. And then the next turn, you flip back up to hero and you push for the win, right? So there's like this rough 3-turn strategy like that that works really well. It's actually how I beat Ronin pretty consistently is doing that strategy, because if he pops the first scheme, it doesn't make a difference to me. So yeah. So anyway, it's very good. It's very strong. Past 3 turns, I don't think you're rushing anymore. I think you're getting into tempo builds, which is kind of what I do. But 2 to 3 turns, I think, is like the general average of what people can do for a rush strategy. But 1 can be done. Next wave. So with next evolution campaign teasing the next content being themed around apocalypse, does that mean we will have a 3rd wave of mutants? Yes, absolutely. We've kind of known this, and I know not everyone knows this and pays attention to all this stuff, but we do know that there is a 3rd wave. We're done after that wave though. The contract or whatever is just for 3 waves. Or maybe it'll be a new encounter set like Mojo. Like I love X-Men and all, but I'm not sure I would like another round of Heroes theme a 3rd time in a row. Good news, you're done after this one, right? Like after this 3rd wave, like there's probably gonna be a decent break. I think they will come back to it sometime down the road, like years down the road, because there are a lot of X-Men to cover. But I do agree that 3 is a lot, right? 3 is a lot of X-Men to go through in 1 wave. So I get how you can kind of be like not upset about it, but just kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done with it, right? So I understand that argument. But we do have 1 more X-Men wave. This will be the last one, at least for some time. We don't know if it's forever or not, but at least for some time. Recommendation for adding Nemesis set instead of normal encounter. I've been trying a few encounter sets with Nemesis. I know this goes against the rules of the game, but functionally they should work fine. Anyone have a good recommendation for matchups? I don't have matchup setups, but I will say that it's an interesting idea. We talked about this earlier with like the Nemesis sets and all that stuff. You would have to figure out what to do with Shadow of the Past. You can either remove it or replace it maybe with like a standard 2 card. But I mean, it's definitely an idea. It's definitely something to try. I was wondering if other people have tried something like this. Let me know that in the comments if you have. All right, rules question. If a card says discard a support you control, does that mean from your hand or in play? You only control things in play, right? If it's in your hand, you don't control it, which I know sounds weird because it's in your hands. Like obviously you're controlling the thing, but like don't think it like you think of the hero. If it's not on the table and the hero can use it, they're not controlling it, right? Don't think of you or me. Think of your hero controlling the thing, and hopefully that makes it easier. All right, high level deck building advice. Basically, they want general advice of how to become a better deck builder. I'm not going to read through all of this, but I can slowly scroll through it so you can read while I talk. It's very, very hard. What I will say is, again, start with Marvel CDB decks and build from there and understand what the deck is trying to do, right? I feel like that's what a lot of people don't do is they don't understand what the deck is trying to do. They just think like, oh, there's some cool cards in it. Understand what they're trying to do with the deck and how everything kind of works together and the synergy that's involved. So understand that and understand what it's trying to do, and then pick a hero that you like and find cards that work off your hero's special ability, right? Whatever's in their printed box, try to find things that work off of that. Generally speaking, you'll do better because what makes the hero unique and strong is whatever's in that text box or like their cards, generally speaking. So find things that work with that. I think will work, or like their upgrades or supports or their events, like things that can key off of that. I think if you do that, that'll help you out a lot. But yeah, just try to understand what decks do and just keep practicing. Just keep practicing. I was a terrible deck builder. I'm still not great, but I'm much better than I was. So just keep practicing, keep building decks, and refine your decks. Learn as you do a deck what makes it work. Right? Play through your deck and truly take notice of like what cards do you use, what don't you use, and why. Right? Why aren't you using those? Because maybe they don't work for that deck. All right, as the last one. Do player side schemes make thematic sense? Before, the villains were the only characters to have schemes, master of minor plans they were attempting to accomplish, whatever. Now, personal side schemes, heroes have the ability to make their own plans, set traps, and all that stuff. But the problem is, in order to accomplish your own side schemes, you have to thwart the threat off of them. That's the part that doesn't make any sense. Why would a hero need to work to reduce the threat in the same way they thwart the villain? Obviously there is like what they said in the end, it's for simplicity's sake. I mean, I think if they wanted to make it thematically make more sense, they could have done something like your thwart adds scheme on to the thing, and then like it would have it would get rid of the thing. Like you have to work on the thing, right? So like build support, right? You have to work towards building something. Like you wouldn't thwart off of it, you would probably like thwart onto it. But the problem is then that messes with game design. There's too many things I like talk about, like adding threat onto a side scheme, and then that becomes a whole weird thing that like, well, why would the villain be helping you do build support, right? It's like I think the problem with personal side schemes is thematically it's very, very hard to make it work. Or theme wise, it makes sense, but the mechanics behind the theme, like it's very hard to make it work. So I think it is simplicity's sake. I like personal side schemes, and I think the idea behind them makes sense. I think thematically they can make sense, but you do have to kind of shut your brain off a little bit with thwarting. Or maybe you can look at it with that, okay, build support, like you have to work on it, and like thwarting is just working on the thing to like stop the thing from happening. So like you're fixing things. I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much. But yeah, if you're like purely on theme, it seems like a little weird. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I can get their argument with this. All right, I know this is a much longer Reddit reply, but I love hot takes. I think they're so much fun. I think it allows people to be honest without being judged too much, generally speaking. So I've always enjoyed that stuff. But like I said, if you made this far in the video, do me a huge favor, hit the like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. If you haven't checked out my Patreon channel, make sure you do that. The link for that will be down below. Any way to support is always greatly appreciated. And then if you want to check out last week's Reddit reply, it'll be, nope, not there. It'll be here. It's the top fives. I'm not going to tell you what that means. You have to go click on the video to go find out. So go click on it and go check it out, and then like that video as well.